Generative AI models like GPT from OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, and Gemini from Google are powerful tools, and they're only getting more powerful. In this video, I'll show you how to use one of these models to build an AI-powered project in Python. Our example project will be a screenshot organizer. It will take the latest screenshot from your screenshots folder, give it a more descriptive name, and move it into a folder based on what's in the image. This tutorial is beginner friendly. If you know how to install Python libraries and run a Python file, you'll be able to follow along. I'll explain everything else as we go. Now, each of the AI providers I mentioned has its own way of writing code to use their models. These can be a bit long and repetitive. So to keep things simple, we'll use a library called Pydantic AI. It makes it much easier to connect with different models by handling a lot of the setup for you. All right, open up your Python editor and let's start building this project. To begin, let me show you what I have. So I have two files here, main.py and helpers.py. Main.py is going to be where we write all the code. In helpers.py, I have a few functions for working with files. So no AI stuff here, just some functions for working with files. I didn't want to make these in the video because it would just take too long. And then I also have a path to my screenshots directory. So this will have to change for your computer. So just put in whatever screenshot directory you have, and then this should work for you. And by the way, if you want to get this code, there's a link in the description below so you can grab it for yourself. So in addition to the two files, I also have a virtual environment set up. I've already installed the one library that we need. So it's called Pydantic AI. So just do pip install Pydantic AI or uv add Pydantic AI. However you install packages for Python, just do it that way. Okay, so let's get into writing the code. So the very first thing that I need to do for this entire process is I need to create a screenshot. So I have my screenshot directory here, and as you can see, it's empty. So let me take a screenshot. I'll take a screenshot of my VS Code editor. Okay, so I just took a screenshot, and we see it's here inside of my screenshot directory. So I need to get the location of this screenshot in my code. So I'm going to use my helper, and it's called get newest screenshot. And what it's going to do is it's going to return the file name of the newest screenshot in my screenshot directory. So this will just list all the files, and it takes the one that has the max create time, which is the newest file. So let me go ahead and write the code for that. So I'll create a variable called newest screenshot, and I'm going to call my get newest screenshot function. And then I don't need to pass anything in, and it will just return the newest screenshot. So let's print this out and run it. So python main.py, and then we see the screenshot name here. So now that I have the screenshot name, what I want to do is I want to open this file so I can read it. So I need to read it first before I can pass it over to the AI because I need to get the binary data out of it. So to open it, I'm going to use with open, and then I'm going to pass in the name of the screenshot along with its directory. So I can use os.path.join, which will join the directory and the file name together. So the directory is going to be screenshots directory, which also comes from my helpers. And then newest screenshot, the variable name. So by joining these two together, I get the full path for the location of the screenshot. And then for the open, I need to pass in both R and B. R means open this file for reading, and B means open it in binary mode. So it's not text, it's binary. So it will be read as a binary file. And then the variable name for this context manager will be file. So once I have that, I can grab the data by creating a variable called data, and then I can do file.read. So Python will take all the binary data from the file and put it in this variable called data, and then I'll do something with this data in a second. Okay, so now it's time to bring in the AI part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something called an agent in Pydantic AI. So I'll just call this rename file agents, and then I'm going to take the agent class from Pydantic AI. And I need to pass a couple of things to it. So first I need to pass a model. So the model is going to be the model from some provider that I want to use. So in this case, I'm going to use one from OpenAI, and this is the one that I'm using. So it's GPT 4.1 mini. You have to supply a model that has vision so I can understand images. So this particular model has it, other models don't. So that's why I'm using this one. There's a default model if you use agent without passing a model, but that model can't read images. So I had to find a model that could. So this particular model can. So before you can use an OpenAI model in Pydantic AI, you need to make sure your environment variable has your API key. So you would do something like this: export OpenAI underscore API underscore key. And then after the equal sign here will be whatever your API key is. And you can get this API key from your OpenAI dashboard. So I've already set this up in my case, and you just need to set this up in yours so you can actually call the AI model. And then another thing that you need is the system prompt. So the system prompt tells the agent or the LLM like what its purpose is and what you want it to do. So typically this is going to be static. Some people like to have their system prompt be dynamic based on what happened in the app or the script or whatever. But in my case, I prefer the system prompt to be static, meaning it's the same every time you run it. And the dynamic part will be the user prompt, which I'll show you in a second. So we have the system prompt, and all I need to tell it is come up with a descriptive file name for the following screenshot. So let me just fix that there. So come up with a descriptive file name for the following screenshot. So it will be able to read in the screenshot in a second, and it will return a file name. So let's go ahead and run this. So we'll call this result as a variable, and I'll do agent.run sync. So inside of run sync, this is where you pass in the user prompt. So the user prompt is dynamic in my view. So this will change every time you run it. So the system prompt will be exactly the same. This agent is always going to come up with a file name, but the user prompt, which I'm about to pass in here, will be different. And for the user prompt, I actually don't need to pass in any text. I just want to pass in the image because it knows that a screenshot is coming. So to get this to work, I need to pass in a list. So it needs to be something iterable. So this could just be text by itself without the list. But because I'm not using text, I need to pass in a list. And I want to pass in binary content. So I've imported this already from Pydantic AI. And the way binary content works is you can pass data to it. So in this case, data equals data. I have the data variable already from before. And then a media type. So all of my screenshots are saved as PNG files. So I can pass that as image/PNG. So when the AI gets this, it will know that it's looking at a PNG image. And then when I run that, I'll get some results. So I can just do results.output and it will give me a file name. So remember, the screenshot that I took was of my VS Code. So let's run this and hopefully it works. And if it does, it should give us a file name. So let's run this. And we just see that I need to give it the full name of the agent. So rename file agent is not just agent. So I'll run this again. And now we see a file name. So it says VS Code Python AI example imports main py WSL Ubuntu 2204. And if you want, you can always tell the system to make the name even more descriptive or shorter. But in this case, I think this works well for my purpose. So VS Code Python AI example imports and so on. So we see it returns a file name from the screenshot. So the next thing I want to do is I want to categorize this file name, right? So the next agent that I'm going to create is going to be responsible for coming up with some kind of category based off of the file name. So I could have created one agent that will create a file name and create a category, but for this video, I wanted to create more independent agents, meaning like the second agent that I'm creating, I can pass in just a file name and it can come up with a category for me. That's why I wanted the name to be descriptive so it can have more information to create a category. So let's go ahead and create that. Let's create a new agent called category agent. And I'm going to use the same model. I don't actually need to use this model because I'm not using Vision, but I'll just continue with the same model from OpenAI. And then I'm going to come up with a system prompt. So for this particular agent, I want it to come up with a category, but I don't want it to come up with a unique category for every single image. So I also want to give it a list of existing categories if they exist. And then I want to tell it to come up with a new category. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you will get a list of categories, and then you'll get a file name. Okay, so you'll get a list of categories and then you'll get a file name. And let's say for a screenshot. For a screenshot to be more specific. And then what I can do is I can say, decide if the screenshot belongs in an existing category or if a new category should be created for that screenshot. And then return the category. Okay, so that should be enough. It's kind of long. I can put it on multiple lines. Let's just make this a multi-line string. And let's break it up at the sentences. Okay. And like that. Okay, so that's the system prompt. You'll get a list of categories, and then you'll get a file name for a screenshot, and then it will decide what the category should be after that. So let's go ahead and run this. So results, and then we have category agent. So I'm not going to make the same mistake again. So category agent dot run sync. And now I need to pass in a list of categories. So let me just make this a multi-line string because I'm going to pass in a few things here. And let's say categories. And what I want to do is I'm going to use a helper, and I have this helper list categories. So what this does is it's going to look at my screenshots directory, and it's going to look at all the directories in there. And those directories will be the categories, and it's going to return those categories as a list basically. So I can just call this inside of the F string. So categories, list categories. And then on the next line, I can say file name equals, and then the file name is going to be the output of the previous agent. So the result here is results. So what I can do is say file name equals result.output, right? And then I can pass the file name in here. And then what I can do is I can just do print results.output, and let's see what happens. So I'll run this, and just a small mistake there with misspelling output. So I'll run it again. And we see the category that it returns for me is VS Code Python. And because these LLMs are random in a sense, it should give me a different category if I run it again. So let me run it again, and let's see what the category is this time. So VS Code Python makes sense for a category. And then for this one, it says final category is Python programming. So both categories are completely fine. They're descriptive enough for me. But as we can see in the first run, it just gave us the category. And then the second run, it gave us a bunch of information first, like how it came to the decision to create that category. And then it returns the category at the end. So a nice thing about Pydantic AI is you can force it to give you some structured output. So like when I use this in the future, I want this to return just the category. And I don't want any extra stuff, because if I just took the text, then what would happen is I'd create a category folder with all this text in it, when really all I want is Python programming. So what I can do with Pydantic is I can go above the agent, and then I can create a class, and I'll call this category. And then it's going to take in base model. So this is going to be a Pydantic model. And our model is going to be very simple. It's just going to have one thing. It's just going to have a category. So then we can take this category and then pass it to the agent and say output type equals category. So what happens here is it will see this output type, and it will force the category into this value, and it will return the object that is a category object. So basically all that means is instead of result.output, I can do result.output.category, and it's going to say this is guaranteed to be a string, and it's basically guaranteed to be the answer that I want, category. If I wanted to, I can do something like this where I have like the reasoning. I can have it give me a reasoning for selecting that category, and I can get the category. So I can have that for debugging, but for our purposes, I'll just have the category. So now when I run it, I should get just the category by itself. Right? And now we see VS Code Python AI example project. So that is the category that it chose for me. Okay, so let's just name this category as a variable. And now let's move on to the third and final agent. So the third agent, what I want it to do is I want it to take the file name, and I want it to move it to the category folder for me. So this is actually something that I could do on my own in code, because I know what the category is and I know what the file name is. But for the purposes of this video, I want to show you the AI doing this for you. So if you had like a more complicated example where you couldn't necessarily specify it in code, then you can use the AI to determine what to do. So let's create a new agent and let's call this move file agent. And once again, it's going to take in the same model. So let me paste that in first. And then it's going to take in a system prompt. And for this, I'll say you'll get a file name and a category. Use the tools. So I'm going to supply tools in a second. So use the tools to first create a category and then move the file to that category. And let's say category folder. Okay. And then I can pass in some tools. So tools are just Python functions that the agent could run, not directly. The LLM doesn't have control over your code, but through Pydantic AI, what happens is the agent will tell it what tool it wants to use, and the Pydantic AI will actually run that tool for you. If you were doing this without Pydantic AI, you would have to run the tool yourself manually by checking the result from the LLM. But with Pydantic AI, it just happens for you automatically. So in here in tool, what you have to do is pass in the tool class, and then you pass in the function. So I have create directory. This comes from my helpers. So create directory, which will just create a directory. And then takes context. A context in this case for Pydantic AI means there's more information that it can take in. Ours is a pretty simple tool, so I just put takes context as false. And then I create a second tool. And this one will be rename and move screenshots. And then takes context will also be false for this. Right? So I have two tools here, one for creating a directory and one for renaming and moving a screenshot. So the basic idea is the AI will understand that it has these tools available to it, and it will decide if it should use a tool in a given situation, right? So if you tell it like, hey, create a directory for me, and it sees it has a tool called create directory, it will call that. And then Pydantic AI will actually end up running that. And then same thing with renaming and moving the screenshot. So now let's try running this. So let's say the results, really, we don't even need a result because this won't return anything, or it doesn't return anything that we need. So I'll say move file agent.run sync. And I want to pass it the old file name. So this is the newest screenshot. So this is the file name on the system. So newest screenshot. And then I'm going to pass in a file name. So new file name. So new file name. And then this is going to be new file name, I believe. No, just file name. So file name like that. And then let's just create a new line. And then finally, we're going to have the category. So the category is going to be category, right? Yeah, this comes from result output category before. And then by passing all that information, it has enough to use the tool. So when it gets the category, it will try to create a directory. If the directory already exists, nothing's going to happen. And then it's going to find the old file name, and then it's going to move it to the category folder, and it's going to rename it as the new file name. So let's go ahead and take a look. So first, let me show you the directory. Okay, so we see it here. So let me run this, and I'll bring it back up. And it has to go through 3 agent calls, so it takes a second, assuming nothing fails. But okay, now we see it created a folder called Python project imports. And then we see that it didn't actually put the file in there. It renamed it, but it didn't put the file inside of the folder. So what I can do is I can do something like I can pass the category before the new file name and see if that helps. That's one option. Another option is I can update the prompt to make sure it really moves the file. So let's see what happens. I'll create another screenshot. Right, and I'll run it. Okay, so we have the new screenshot here. And let's see what happens. Let's see if it puts it in the same directory, and let's see what happens here. Okay, so we saw the file disappear. And then if I look here, we see that the screenshot was moved into the directory. And as you can see from the screenshot, it is the code that I just took a screenshot of, right? So it works better when I put the category before the file name. So the thing with these AIs, you have to experiment and determine like the best approach because it's not guaranteed to work. So let's just try this with one more screenshot. Let me find a screenshot of something random. Okay, so I have Google Images here, and I'm just going to search for dogs. right? Okay, so I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. And then I'll go back to my VS Code and I'll run it. And now let's take a look. So we have the screenshot here. Let's see what category it creates and let's see what it renames the file to. So this should just take a moment. Okay. So it decided that the category was Google search results dark mode. And then if I open up the folder, we see Google search results for dogs images dark mode, right? So that's what it decided. So like I said, with these AIs, you have to kind of come up with a good prompt to give it enough information. But I mean, if you think about it, this is accurate in this sense because I am searching Google. So it's not like it's wrong or anything, but maybe we are more concerned with the images of the dogs as opposed to like where we got the images from. So you can experiment with the prompt to determine like the best way of going about it. So that's it. That's the example AI agent that I wanted to create. It's actually, 3 put together. But as you can see with Pydantic AI, it doesn't take that much code to get something significant to work. And of course, you can modify these as much as you want to kind of get it to work in the exact way that you want. So you may have realized that Pydantic AI has like a weird syntax, or maybe not if you're familiar with type-ins. So the idea with Pydantic AI is it's closely integrated with Pydantic. So if you're interested in learning something else that's closely integrated with Pydantic, you should check out this Fast API video, which is a Python web framework that heavily uses Pydantic.